Okay, so I've actually come up with a list of questions for you. So Luke, what is your name and title?
My name is Luke Alford, and my title is I am an instructor, I guess, and I am the program coordinator for uh, the School of Integrated Physiology and Athletic Training. And I struggle with this. It's not because I'm making it up. We've had a name change over the last year and a half, and I want to say Health and Human Performance, but we're now Integrative Physiology and Athletic Training, um, IPAT for short, as opposed to HHP.
Mm.
So yeah. Anyway, I'm over here. I kind of run the general operations of the department. I do a bunch of financial stuff. I advise students. I wear a lot of hats, and I also teach. So I kind of have my fingers in a little bit of everything.
So what do you teach?
I teach medical terminology and then basic exercise prescription.
Oh, cool. So there's some like pharmacology in there.
No, not really at all.
Really?
Thank God. No, yeah, no. We have a lot of acquaintances that are actual pharmacists, and
Yeah.
I don't even like to pretend to dabble. The terminology side of things is like really basic, um, like word analysis. It's like an intro to the nomenclature of the field. And
Oh,
then exercise prescription is sort of looking at the spectrum of health and disease and how you decide how to program cardiovascular exercise, resistance training, balance and flexibility, kind of at like a first cut level for our intro students.
interesting.
Yeah.
So how did you get there? Like what was your like background in school like and
Yeah, I'm academically inbred a little bit. I started out, I think I started out as like a literature major, actually. My mom's a librarian and I love to read. And I think, yeah, I don't know if I agree with this to say, like this piece of advice, but I remember my dad being like, Luke, what the hell are you going to do with like a literature degree? And he's like, you got to pick something. And I was like, I like the human body. I like human physiology too. So I leaned into kind of the human biological sciences. I found a home in health and human performance. Again, we're now IPAT. So I got my bachelor's degree there, and then came back for a master's degree. I took like a year, like a gap year, and I went back to my small hometown, and I shot right on back to Missoula and got started graduate school in the same department. Really, I think started to finally understand what human physiology was as a graduate student. Um, and yeah, they hired me on right afterwards, doing a litany of things. I used to cover labs, like a lot of the lab stuff early, and then got more into lecture kind of later in my, I guess later in my career. I don't know. It feels like I've been here forever. For those of you watching, um, like I feel like I've been here forever because little known fact, Katie and I used to work when we were undergrads for Residence Life. We were the cool RAs together. So when people ask me like, "Hey, Luke, how long have you been working here?" I'm like, I get that like seasoned veteran look, like that 10,000 yard stare, and I'm like, forever. Like my whole adult life, I've been cashing checks from UM and
It's like
nowhere.
coming up on maybe 20 years, right?
Yeah.
Like
What year is
legitimately.
it? So no, yeah. I guess
Like
I
16.
graduated. It's 16 years,
Yeah.
really.
Yeah,
It's
I
like a
know it's
lot of
nuts.
service, man. And so when I say I'm academically inbred, I've truly like never left UM, and sometimes that's people see that as like a bad thing, and maybe it is, but I say I'm super helpful to anyone that has a question about I feel like I can give like a really good solid uh, bit of perspective and advice, And like I said, like I don't think majoring in literature is a bad thing. You know, I still love literature. So if any of you happen to be thinking about literature, come to me and I'll talk you into literature. I love the humanities and sciences. So yeah. Anyway, if you see me and have a question about anything, about like which dorm, which floor, oh, which residence hall. Katie, we have to call them residence halls now.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Dorms is to, like second class citizen. They're residence halls now.
Oh.
So yeah, down to like how to organize a plate at the food zoo for maximum like food carrying potential to like obscure minors on campus. You can flag me down and ask a question.
When you were starting your long academic career that you're telling us about, did you take Human Form and Function 112? Do you remember that far back?
I'll tell you what, I remember so far back, I don't think that class existed.
Really?
Do you remember Heather Davis?
Mm-hmm.
I think she has a different last name now. She might be married now. I'm not sure if her name's Davis. Or maybe it changed to Davis. She's actually in PA school now, by the way. But anyway, I think Heather might have taught the first iteration of this course, but it was seen as necessary, I believe, because so many students were struggling with Dr. Kathy Westfall's A&P, which I'm sure you remember taking.
Mm-hmm.
And so they were like, oh no, like we need a little bit of a training ground for anatomy and physiology. We need a form and function class. I truly like really would have found that useful though. Go ahead, Katie.
I was going to ask, what was kind of your favorite physiology class throughout your career? Like what class did you take about the human body that you were just like, oh man, this makes everything click?
Okay, so my favorite one would have been Dr. Kriya Bruner's endocrinology class.
Mm-hmm.
Is that did I say her last name right?
Yeah, you did. She's still in DBS. She's a chair right now.
Yeah. I see her around sometimes, and I'm like always wave wildly like a fanboy. So, like her class was probably the most interesting to me. But to be honest, like what really hooked me was probably the physiology portions of A&P. It felt kind of like watching an episode of House, right? Like figuring out the mechanisms and understanding like plausible outcomes if something goes wrong. There's a pathophysiology class. I really took an unorthodox approach to a HHP undergrad degree. I took a ton of the DBS elective classes like hematology, immunology,
wow.
just kind of as electives because it all supplemented the human physiology specific stuff that we got inside the department. But then, yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say, as your master's, you had probably some type of project or some type of question you were trying to answer. What was that?
Yeah, I was looking at how intense like HIIT physical activity influenced cognition. So we know a lot about like there are sort of hormonal substances in the brain that are released with physical activity, and we've known that like people who like student athletes, people who are physically active perform well in school or academic exercises, and like that connection is somewhat tied to perhaps brain development and brain function and sort of the neurochemical signals released by particularly intense exercise. It turns out there are fun experiments to be ran with like 3, 5, 6 minutes of really intense exercise and sitting down to do something cognitively difficult. In fact, hold on just one second. For those of you interested, I have this book right here, Spark. You guys are probably reading it backwards. This book probably ignited my excitement in the area to study, and I carried it around just because, like, what are you going to do? Throw away a book? Like I said, my mom's a librarian. You don't do that. But it was really a seminal piece of writing that transformed like my academic career. So I still have it on my desk. But, yeah.
Wow, that's interesting. So, did you, I'm sure you also recognize that like exercise is one of the ways in which you can stimulate neurogenesis or the generation of new neurons, and that's the brain is pretty, set in the number of neurons that it has for the most part. There's not a ton of ways you could do that, but exercise is one of the ways that you can kind of stimulate the brain to make more little neurons if you've damaged them or something.
Isn't that cool?
It is cool. It is very cool, especially when you think about how exercise can be used as a therapy, in that regard for cognitive deficits, another, types of diseases that can affect the brain. Yeah. Let's say what else. Oh, so what do you love about your job?
I think I love critical thinking. I like there are a lot of problems you have to work through, like a lot of unique problems you can think through. But mostly I like helping people. Um, yeah, unfortunately, there's not a ton of money to be made in helping people unless you go directly into like working in a hospital or something. But that's okay, like because if you really enjoy helping people, you don't have to make a boatload of cash. But I've discovered about myself, I think I feel the most value and self worth. I feel most mission driven if I've had like if I've helped a student um, understand something or connect to a resource that they were missing. I was a first generation college student. And I remember being like really terrified about what was unknown to me with college. I had a great set of peers. Like I had like a girlfriend at the time who was older and she could help show me the way a little bit. I became an RA, so I learned a lot about the resources. But I remember walking in, I didn't have a lot of help from my parents. They were kind of intimidated about college too, and I think they sort of just dropped me off and got the heck out of Dodge.
They're like, good luck. We'll
Um,
pick you up in 4 months.
exactly, and like when you come from a small remote town and you're a first generation college student, like you've never met a professor. They're like so mysterious. Like the only professors I knew were like McGonagall and like Snape, right? Like Dumbledore. Like these like mysterious professors were people you wanted to impress, and it's hard to ask for help in college because you're constantly assessed about what you know and don't know. And regardless of being in college, asking for help is one of the hardest things anyone ever does at any point in their life. And so I realize when I interact with students now that if they're coming to me with a question, even like a minor question or a serious question, like they probably really had to fight to get themselves into my office.
Yeah.
And I love being able to just watch maybe a, like a kilogram of stress fall off their back and like have them relax a little bit. That's super rewarding.
Yeah.
And so the lesson out there, students, is ask for help. Okay, like we want to help you.
Yeah.
We can't divine the problems that you may have. So there's no simple way to do it, but just try to ask for help if you need it.
Yeah, and I think I agree with you wholeheartedly, and that's part of why I've chosen my profession as well. That idea that you can not necessarily always just change somebody's life, but at least make their day a little bit better, a little easier, point them in the right direction, open their mind to something that they didn't consider before, and even doing stuff like this, like having you tell your story, I think opens people's minds to opportunities that they maybe didn't realize that there were.
Yeah, totally.
Okay, so I asked you what you love about your job, but are there any like downsides? I think you kind of like hit upon the not super financially rewarding, but are there any other like kind of downsides that you can think of? Not, I mean,
Yeah.
with every position there's going to be a downside, but
yeah, let's be honest. If I made like $10,000 more, like I'd just probably have fancier shoes, right? Like I'd still be in the same financial situation. I'd have a really soft bed. I think I don't know the nature of working in higher ed and really when I became like an official employee, not just like some sort of undergraduate RA or something. I think the university was going through its like first contraction phase of like, we first started seeing a little bit of a dip in enrollment and whatnot. And so to get hired, you had to be super helpful, right? You needed to provide something valuable for them to make budgetary room for you. And so one of the reasons why my job is so all over the place, I think, is because I just kept saying, yeah, I'll do that. Like, yeah, I'll do that too. Budget? I've never balanced my checkbook, but I'll sure as hell try to figure out how we should spend our lab fees, right? Like, and so a tough thing has been learning how to balance, like when to say no and when to say I've got enough to do already.
Yeah.
And again, like I told you, I love being helpful. I love helping people. So if someone comes to me with a problem, an extra job, it's in my nature to say, well, yeah, let me do that for you. But as we all become more functioning adults, and this includes me, this is some self work I've got to do. Like you have to figure out where those boundaries are, and higher ed is particularly a place that can take advantage of that.
Yeah, but I think what you just did there was you gave the I think accepted interview answer. If you go in for a job interview, students, and somebody asks you, what is your downfall? What is your greatest what do you call it, vice? You can say, I try to do too much. That's always like the best answer to give in terms of like a vice that somebody has. But I hear you. I think it's hard when you have to wear a lot of hats. And I think as a young professional, you're asked to do a lot and to validate your position. And so you don't say no. And I wholeheartedly understand Luke, and I myself in the same position all the time.
Definitely, I bet, because yeah, you've got your background in like research too, right? Like you can probably pinch hit any role, right?
Well, right now I teach in both the neuroscience and the pharmacy school. So I'm serving 2 masters that way. And then I just started running the social media for the neuroscience program. So that's its own little kind of side job that's takes some time,
That's a full-time job. In like organizations, they hire information media specialists.
Yeah. So I guess if this doesn't work out, that's my plan B. No.
Do you have a TikTok? Are you TikToking?
It's funny. This class told me that I should try TikTok, and it has melted my brain for hours. And I have not started my own TikTok because it seems a little intimidating. Because I'm like, I don't know how you would edit something like that. But oh my goodness.
I have a TikTok. I don't like I'm not a content creator, but I'll like scroll through it, and I'm blown away at the creativity.
Yeah. But think about it in a classroom setting, though, how you could make that an assignment. Be like, you need to create a TikTok video as your assignment. Like I've done that in past classes, but it's been YouTube videos. But I think like staying more current, I think doing like a human form and function TikTok would be kind of fun, So.
Oh yeah, I think it's an amazing idea.
Yeah, but it's almost too late in the semester to implement it now, and I think this might be the only time I teach this class.
Oh. No.
Well, it's okay. Again, because I was hired by the neuroscience department, they want me to teach neuroscience courses, and this kind of falls outside of that purview, even though we are covering the central nervous system right now. Okay, back to official interview. Okay, so my last piece of advice is, my last question is what advice would you give students who are like, I am interested in the human body and I want to make this my career? Like, what would you advise them to do? I mean, not necessarily to get into your position, but kind of any position, really.
I would say, and my answer here isn't going to acknowledge the objective experience of what it's like to be like an 18 to 20, I don't know, 6-year-old. Let's just say 26. I don't know why I drew the line at 26. But you guys don't understand how much freaking time you have. It's incredible. I would say give your time, and I just talked about drawing boundaries, but I would say give your time to getting as much hands-on experience as possible. There is zero limit to the depth and breadth of academic book learning that you can do. You can't you can't find the bottom of some places, and then when you do find the bottom, like if you're not an expert, you might not even know you're at the bottom, right? Like you could just be going in circles. But what you can do tangibly is try to figure out some hands-on learning experiences, volunteering with a professor in a lab. Maybe you're going to try to land yourself in a clinic doing whatever job they'll pay you to do, or whatever hours they'll give you in which you can volunteer. Make those connections and like figure out how the science is applied, and then it makes it easier to go back and view like the sea of information that you can discover, and you'll see it like Neo from the Matrix, which might be a dated reference, right? But you can see all of the info and know which is like the things that have the most sticking power, I suppose. I kind of started doing it opposite. Like I just remember like never feeling like there was an end to the studying. And fortunately I enjoyed it, but it was like, oh, well, what about this? And what about that? And how does this system affect that system? And you can go forever and then realize that like I just spent an hour down a rabbit hole when I'm going to be responsible for answering like one multiple choice question on this topic. Like, you know, like, so I'd say work hard in school and then try to get some practical experience. And if you show up and do really well in your like sort of practical area, you're going to have an expert or a practitioner say something really nice about you for a future interview or a graduate program. So that's like a double positive, I suppose.
Yeah.
It's try to immerse yourself in the applied side of the field. That's what I'd say.
Yeah, I think getting kind of immersed in experience, because I think especially when you're young in a field, you don't really know all of the different options that you have. And so like if
Mm.
you can gain experience in just like one little sliver, I think it opens up the window, the door, yeah, opens up the door to a lot of other possible exposure experiences that maybe you didn't really consider originally. So I think throwing yourself into experiences is, I think, great advice, you know.
And I think that's great advice for every walk of life, not
Mhm.
just academia. Like throw
Yeah.
yourself out there.
Yeah. I mean, worst thing that you can do is you fail, and you've even if you do fail, you've learned something, you know. Like if you,
You
any
should
job,
fail.
yeah.
Yeah,
Well, I mean, any job you take, you're either going to walk away kind of loving or kind of being indifferent about it. And if you're indifferent about, you know that now, and you can move forward and make more informed choices.
absolutely. Yeah,
But,
that's good advice right there.
um, do you have anything else you'd like to add or share with the Bio 112 Human Form and Function
Bio
class?
112 Human Form and Function class. Oh, it's such an exciting journey. I don't know. I love it. What's true is like what you learn in this class is going to be applicable, I think, for many of your other classes, which might should have been a message in September, but uh,
You're like, I'll study really hard for the final.
yeah, exactly. No, I don't know. Make sure you have some fun. I don't know. You know, like it's as gross and like dark and fatalistic as this is. Have some fun because like you could get hit by a bus tomorrow. So throw yourself out there, get engaged in experiences. Um, and yeah, I don't know. College is such a special place. It's probably why I stayed here. Is that there's like no other place like the university. And you know, you can. I love. I don't know about. Okay, I just came up. I wish I would have started here, Kate. Um, I'm sorry, Dr. Holick. Yeah. Uh, what I love about the university is there are experts in like every field walking among us, like constantly. And you know, like we have like Nobel laureates on campus. We have people that get NIH funding like left and right. Like there
Millions of
are
dollars that they're bringing to campus.
there are truly people not only that live here locally that walk among you in the UC and around the Oval and like sweat with you at the gym, but we bring in experts from the outside to discuss like topics, and we're talking about cutting edge, like the top, like the 1% of knowledge. Like just incredible amounts of knowledge coalesce here. And I just love that if you have a climate science question, you could probably run into one of those professors on the Oval and ask them. And like I said, like people are here to help. I have yet to meet like an unapproachable academic, at least at the University of Montana. We're pretty laid back here. Uh,
Yeah.
that's not,
Yeah.
maybe that's not true everywhere, but
No, it definitely is not.
people are pretty chill here, and I like that I can ask someone about like Shakespeare if I have a question, because we have those experts here. Geosciences, yeah, pharmacology, physical therapy, like everything. It's amazing to me, and I would take advantage of that. If you have a curiosity to scratch, you can probably find like someone to help.
So, I guess this is bringing the question very specific back to you, but like the program that you're a part of, what do your students end up doing? What do they end up becoming?
Okay, so most of them come here and they want to be physical therapists for whatever reason. Like 75% are like, I want to be a physical therapist. And I think it has to do with like a lot of our students are, um, it just seems like that's the coolest thing, or maybe in their community, like that's the coolest person in their community who went to college. Um, it it's like physical therapists, but we end up sending students all over the healthcare field to like occupational therapy, to medical school sometimes.
Yeah.
They go into various healthcare fields. They go into um, performance. You know, I don't know. They really, it's a springboard. Especially our uh, pre-professional degree, our exercise science pre-professional degree, is a springboard to anything in the health sciences. PA school is super common. Um, and so everyone comes here wanting to be a physical therapist, but then they get immersed in something and they discover a new passion, it seems like. And I think that's pretty cool too. But yeah, I don't know if not that I would want to rewrite like my path. That's scary, but I think like definitely being open to experience, especially when you're like brand new. If you're like a first semester, we have some like first semester green stick freshmen right in this class, and maybe you think you want to be a physical therapist, but a lot of times we see like students who become like medical doctors, and they never were told by anyone that they could have like not aimed higher but just aimed differently. And you're like, I don't know, you've gotten A's in everything, you just crushed A and P. You got an A in your first semester of physics, have you thought about medicine? And they're like, kind of. They're like, yeah, but no one ever told me I was smart enough to be a doctor. And you're like, yeah, you are. And the truth is, most of us are. You don't have to be a rocket scientist to be a doctor. They're like regular people that either had like opportunity, time, like, or a lot of direction. So,
Yeah.
um,
Takes a lot of focus, but I think if you are determined, then, it's definitely a possibility.
totally. It's much harder to do what Dr. Holick did than it is to become a doctor. I'll tell you that much, like a medical doctor. You got to be much smarter than your average doctor to be Dr.
Oh,
Holick. That's the truth.
that's true. But I think everyone's has their own paths, and it's just a matter of finding what you really love, and finding something that resonates with you. And so, look, when you and I discuss our career paths and why we chose what we did, I think it's that idea of helping people. And if that's, the person who's watching this now, if that's kind of part of what you enjoy, then definitely take that into your career choices. Like, you don't want to be making a choice where you're going to be stuck, isolated in a room and not interacting with people if that's part of what you really enjoy about your life. But if you're kind of a person who's like, I like having very discrete problems with very clear answers, then maybe working with individuals aren't necessarily the best move, because people are gray, but that's the way the world works. So, well, I guess that's my last list on my question list, but is there anything else you'd like to add, Luke, before we kind of end our more formal conversation?
If you see me around campus, holler at me. Yeah, I'll say hi. I love love chatting it up with students and everyone. So yeah, don't be afraid to say hi or ask me questions. Swing by my office in McGill Hall if you have questions. But yeah, I love Montana because it's a friendly neighborhood. So
Yep. What is it? Small town with long roads.
yeah, be friendly.
Awesome. Thank you so much for your time, Luke. I'm going to stop recording, but I'm still going to chat with you if that's okay.
Yeah, perfect.